Emily Carr was born on December 18, 1871, in Victoria, British Columbia. She was raised by English parents named Richard and Emily Carr. Emily and her family lived on Birdcage Walk, which is now present-day Government Street. Emily was the second youngest out of 9 children. The Carr family was raised on early-age English traditions and customs. From a young age, Emily was told from her mother that she needed to stay within her gender roles, things like cooking, cleaning around the house, and looking after her siblings. But Emily had other bigger dreams. Her father, Richard, was a very religious Presbyterian man and also abided by gender stereotypes, but believed that Emily was a very talented painter and wanted her to pursue the arts. Emily loved oil paints and acrylics, and she decided from a very young age that painting would be one of her greatest accomplishments. Emily's signs of rebellion continued throughout her life. Emily states in her late book, Growing Pains, the autobiography of Emily Carr, the 4-year-old Emily will not lie passively across the lap of a Presbyterian minister and receive his baptismal blessing. Oh no. Instead, she kicks and thrashes and runs to her mother. Also, Emily's mother had a large influence on her before her death in 1891. Emily's mother was patient, kind, and loving towards Emily, and that patience stuck with Emily throughout her life. After both Emily's parents died at the very fragile age of 12, she started to attend many different art schools. First, Emily attended San Francisco Art Institute for 2 years from 1890 to 1892. Later, Emily went to study at London at the Westminster School of Art. In 1905, Emily returned to British Columbia and taught an art class called Ladies' Art Club. But after about a month, she was unpopular amongst her students because of her rude behavior, like smoking and cursing at her students in class. At the age of 27, Emily began her first trips to Aboriginal villages. In these villages and beautiful views of nature, Emily began her obsession with creating modern art in nature. Emily stayed in a village near Usalet on the west coast of Vancouver Island. She was entranced by the Rockies, and the tops dangled into clouds, and the rivers, like white ribbons, boiling far below, and lofty trees crouched at the bottom of the canyon. Emily had her first interactions with native peoples in the valleys of the Rockies. Emily had very positive and influential interactions with native peoples, and her experiences with them expanded the depths of her understanding and appreciation for the earth even more. In 1910, Emily returned to Europe to study at the Académie Classique in Paris. Emily met Harry Gibb in Paris, where she admired his use of the falsification and vivacious colors in his works. Harry Gibb was a large influence on Emily's paintings and her artistic growth. It was because of Gibb that Emily adopted the use of vibrant color palettes used in her later works. In 1912, Emily returned to Vancouver and created an exposition of 70 watercolors and oils to become the first artist to introduce Fauvism to Vancouver. Fauvism is a group of artists that emphasize strong colors or realistic values retained in impersonations. In 1912, Emily opened a studio at 1465 West Broadway in Vancouver, but quickly shut down because locals didn't support her new style of painting. Within the year, Emily traveled north to Haida Gwaii and Skeena River and painted up the coast. One of her most famous works, Tanano, was created and inspired by 3 totems she saw outside the village. However, for the next 15 years, Emily did very little painting and ran a boarding school called House of Sorts. Emily struggled to stay afloat emotionally and financially. In 1927, though, Emily sent her works of 26 oil paintings along with pottery and woven rugs inspired by indigenous peoples to the National Museum of Ottawa. Recognition of her work grew in London, Paris, Washington, Amsterdam, and around Canadian cities. In 1935, Emily had her first solo show in Canada at the Women's Association of Canada in Toronto. Emily was soon invited into the Group 7, which was Canada's most recognized painters. She was welcomed by Warren Harris, who explained to Emily that she was one of them. Emily created one of her most notified pieces, Odds and Ends, which depicted the industrial logging companies and devastating effects to the environment and indigenous peoples. Sadly, after multiple heart attacks and a stroke, Emily was bound to her sister's house. Because of this, Emily had to express herself through literature and books. Some of her books include The House of Sorts and The Book of Small. On March 2nd, 1945, Emily Carr passes away from her 4th heart attack and dies in her hometown of Victoria, British Columbia. Emily Carr was honored in Louisville and around the world by the International Honor Quote Collection. The panel includes a self-portrait of Emily as the main focus. The stitching was done by hand and made out of various fabrics, including cotton and wool. The creator Anne Bird created this quilt panel to celebrate Emily as a prosperous painter and writer. Emily was known for her Indian name, Caligula Kawik, which means laughing one. The artist's reason for making the panel is to tell the story of Emily Carr and her ability to portray the beauty of nature and the destruction man has on nature and its inhabitants.